Greetings, Barcadians, and welcome to another edition of Gaming News Weekly. With your hosts, as ever, me, Tabs, my good friend, channel buddy, fellow tarnished for now, but not for long, Rich. Say hello, Rich.
Hello, how's everyone doing?
And the text has just come through now, Rich. That's
excellent. Excellent. Well,
Rich
to be
sends
fair,
me the script every week, so that's go on.
That might be a good way to segue, but apologies as we missed last week's video drop. I completely messed up the upload of the video. I managed to somehow export the previous week's video, but called it this week's video. I was having some problems with the editing software that you use, and then it wasn't until Friday after I'd gone away that we realised and we couldn't do anything, so we didn't drop last week. So apologies. That will be a bonus drop to today when you're watching this of last week's and also this week's.
Old news, of course, but of course, Barcadians, you only tune in for our insight and cutting edge opinions in the games industry. So yeah, sorry about that, Barcadians. Hope you enjoy it. For those new to the channel, just to give you a quick overview, we try and keep this into about a 25-30 minute slot, depending on how excited we get. And we cover off generally three juiciest games news articles we can find in any given week in the games industry. We follow that up with a everything else round of quickfire headlines, sound bites, and but before we get into that, we always tell you what we've mostly been playing in our gaming personal lives, if you like. And it's just been really broken record for the last few weeks because Elden Ring is such a massive game. It's just kept us that busy, and that's not going to change for now. Although we do think we're on the, what would you say, Rich, the last hurdle, the last lap?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how long that's going to take is difficult to say. I mean, we're heading towards, I'm guessing, a series of boss battles ultimately that will finish the game off for us, but how long that will take, certainly some of the more difficult bosses, where we're, back to backing them, not doing them, changing loadouts and stuff. You could spend a couple of hours just trying to get through like one or two bosses. So how long that relates to in time, I don't know. I actually haven't played any computer games at all this week. Obviously, was away for a few days, as I mentioned earlier, and then we've got back and we just haven't managed to touch base on games. I'm sort of a little bit stuck on Elden Ring, so I can't sort of move forward without Tabs. Tabs have been busy, I've been busy, so yeah, we've just sort of missed so far this week. So I actually haven't played anything this week so far.
I think I've soloed a little bit of Elden Ring, if we count Sunday, because I've pushed a little bit on in my world while Rich was away, and I say I'm twiddling my thumbs. I'm not, am I, Rich? There's so much for me to be busy with.
Absolutely.
But you just need a bit of downtime sometimes, and
absolutely,
that was what I went to. So yeah, we're going to rush through the news because we need to catch Rich up in his world. So let's crack on. Let's crack on, mate, with the first story this week.
Bye.
I don't know what I'm doing, what I'm talking about. Let's crack on. Square Enix fire sale is the first headline we've got for you this week, Barcadians. This article comes from The Guardian. This is what they had to say. The Japanese gaming company behind Final Fantasy is selling off 3 studios, including the rights to hit franchises, including Tomb Raider, in a $300 million or £240 million deal. Tokyo-based Square Enix has sold US-headquartered Crystal Dynamics and Canada-based Eidos Montreal and Square Enix Montreal to the Nasdaq-listed Swedish gaming group Embracer. The deal includes the intellectual property rights to games such as Tomb Raider, which has sold more than 88 million units, Deus Ex, Thief, and Legacy of Kain. It also includes 50 back catalogue games and will add 1,100 staff to Embracer, taking its global headcount to more than 14,000. We're thrilled to welcome these studios into the Embracer family, said Lars Vingerfor, co-founder and group chief executive at Embracer. We recognise the fantastic IP, world-class creative talent and track record of excellence that have been demonstrated time and again over the past decades. Square Enix also have a multi-year deal with Disney to make Marvel games. To date, it has made only 2 titles, Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy. Ding ding! Which is likely to be part of the deal but was not mentioned in the announcement. Embracer, which has a market value of $7.2 billion, has spent more than $8 billion, making over 60 acquisitions since 2020. The largest was the $2.75 billion euro acquisition, of French board game company Asmodee Games in December. So one heck of a conglomerate, Rich, from the sounds of things. One of these ones you don't have the biggest public profile, because I can't say I'm, it doesn't really bring much to mind when I hear Embracer Group. But yeah, I mean, this was strange because it just seemed like a right bargain. $300 million. When you compare that to some of the recent acquisitions of deal we've seen, and then you see there what they're getting, some of those IP. I mean, Tomb Raider alone, $300 million seems like a bit of a bargain. Never mind the rest of them. Deus Ex, Thief, Legacy of Kain, and then these back catalogue titles. So yeah, I think it really raises questions as to what the hell is Square Enix playing at. And I'm sure I've read as well, Rich, in other articles, part of the reason behind this is just that they want to focus on the blockchain. They want to focus on NFTs, which from what we're hearing is it's a collapsing market. We know from influencers verbatim that we don't really want NFTs, do we? It's kind of being thrust upon us as another money-making scheme. Whether it sticks or not still remains to be seen. But I can't get my head around this move. It just seems really, really daft. What do you make of it, mate?
Well, the first thing that springs to mind that I think's odd was it. And obviously people watching this won't realise this because we didn't drop the news, but wasn't it last week we were talking about, it may have been the previous week, we were talking about the fact that they sort of teased some new Tomb Raider that was coming out. So, and then now the studio's been sold, which just seems an odd thing. I have to say though, 1,100 potential people who make games for $300 million, that seems like a bargain, in terms of, say you have games that you're trying to complete, or you have certain games you want to make. That's a big chunk of staff that you're bringing into your sort of umbrella of companies to create games that you want to create. So it's very interesting. Yeah, I do find it a little bit odd, and like you say, at 300 million, it seems like an utter bargain. I mean, you said at the top of that that Tomb Raider alone has sold 88 million units. Well, if they were to say, I mean, how many Tomb Raiders has there been? 6, maybe? 5 or 6, possibly?
And the spin-offs of some kind. I'm not really sure.
So let's say let's just spitball that there's been 10, and they've all sold 8 or 9 million. Well, surely that would go a chunk of a way to paying that back on its own. Just one Tomb Raider game.
This is it. These are the golden tickets, aren't they? Which really can amass a company's wealth over time and their place in the market. And then that's one IP, not to mention Deus Ex, which has a significant fan base, Thief as well. They've got these classics like Legacy of Kain, which I know there's a cult kind of fan base that kind of will remake into power. Soul Reaver, I think specifically. So yeah, it's just, I mean, we don't know, do we, what's going on behind the scenes? It makes you think, the management, have they lost all control? Have they got no faith in their current workflow and the teams working on these games and IPs? I just can't get my head around it because it seems like a giveaway. And I also can't believe, I'm sure I read an article somewhere which was basically saying the price reflects there's not that much competition in the market for these IPs, which again I can't believe. Surely with what we've seen from Sony and Microsoft, they'd be snapping up a deal like this for some more treasured IPs. So it's so strange. I'd like to know a lot more about it. Maybe we'll get more insight in the coming months. I suppose the positive flip to it, Rich, is they're being bought by huge monolith who will have plenty of resource to throw at it.
Absolutely.
And hopefully that means we will see revitalized versions and franchises of the likes of games we talked about at Deus Ex, Thief, Legacy of Kain, which would be great, as long as they don't You often worry when things consolidated like this about, homogenization. And we talked about it a bit in recent weeks. Games being churned out that all look very similar and feel very similar. So we'll watch this one closely. But Rich, move us on. Story number 2 this week.
Absolutely. So story number 2, Switch Sports Review Roundup. So Switch Sports has come out, and we're going to give you a rundown of what people have been saying about it. It currently sits at a 74 on Metacritic, and these are a broad spectrum of reviews that Tabs has pulled us together from various publications. So to start us off, we've got Video Games 24/7, gave it an 80, and they had this to say: when Nintendo gets these sorts of lifestyle event games right, they're always a slam dunk. Sometimes the accuracy of Motion Plus is missed. One can see how Nintendo could have done more new and include all new stuff, and yet Nintendo Switch Sports is pretty much exactly what I wanted. I can see how it'd be one of my absolute favourite games of the year. That's Nintendo's magic power. Praise indeed.
Next up, we've got Game Informer, give it a 75. They said this: a seemingly endless supply of rotating collectible packs and skill-based intensity makes the game's online multiplayer dynamic. Even classic sports like bowling and chambara are improved with elimination rule sets and charged twin swords, respectively. However, after a few fun-filled hours, I experienced all of Switch Sports' playable components and occasionally lost interest after long stints of game time. Switch Sports doesn't step out of Wii Sports' long shadow, but it's still a solid runner-up.
WCCF Tech gave it a 70, and they had this to say: Nintendo Switch Sports is a fun and nostalgic romp that offers nicely upgraded visuals and a well-implemented motion controls, but there simply isn't enough of it. With a meager 6 sports, only 2 of which bring anything truly new to the table, and a very few extras, this one probably won't compete for your attention for long. And that's interesting that last portion there is actually mirrored in the previous review that Tabs mentioned there. So I think seemingly fairly well received, this game. It sounds like it's a pick up and play for a bit of time and then you'll be putting it down again, but it doesn't mean it won't be a game that people like to play, short burst every now and again. So it is interesting. I do think this looks like a fun game. For me personally, I feel like I'm over games where I have to get up and do something. I feel like served now, if I want to go and play tennis, if I want to play tennis, I'm just going to go and play tennis. And I realise that's not for everyone, but these games sort of miss the mark for me nowadays. Tabs.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, isn't it? It was clearly a bit of an experiment by Nintendo. I think they're trying to recapture the magic, aren't they had with Wii Sports, because that was a phenomenon. And there's been some insight this week that's come out from Nintendo of America legend Reggie Fils-Aimé, who actually pushed for it to be bundled with the Wii. Apparently Shigeru Miyamoto was not a fan of that idea. I think it ended up being successful, and it was massive. We saw it get everywhere, didn't we? In care homes, all the old dears that have it out playing Wii Sports as a family sort of affair. And I think that's perhaps what Nintendo's play was here. Can we recapture, that part of the casual market and further grow the Switch install base? We'll have to see on sales. Reviews alone won't tell us the full story. It's clearly not hit the mark like the first one did and captured that novelty in the same way. But that doesn't mean to say that you won't have your casual audience queuing up for it still, because that's really what this game was, wasn't it, mate? It was built to be a bit of a party game and to have some fun in short bursts in groups. It wasn't meant to be a kind of a solo epic. Interesting one. But we'll see. It might be one of Nintendo's failed experiments. We'll have to chalk it up to, which they've got many, but I respect them for that. They're brave. They're trying new things.
For me as well, the thing is, one of the biggest selling points, and actually one of the things that I think is the reason why the Switch sells so well, is the fact that you can use it on the move. So you can use it on the train, you can use it you're going traveling with your mum and dad, you're going on holiday, you can use it in the back of the car. All these different things that make it super portable. Well, a game like this is not really doesn't really lean into that portability, because it very much needs to be played in a space where you can sit it down and you can obviously use the motion and stuff. So I feel like for that reason, and the fact I do think that that's why the Switch sells so well, because people are using it on the move. It's one of those perfect consoles for that. So I wonder whether that will mean the sales aren't quite as good as they expect. But as you say, time will tell on that one.
Yeah, spot on, mate. Anyway, let's move on. Story number 3 this week. Nintendo is the theme here. Nintendo culture issues is the headline. And this article comes from Scream Rant, who had this to say. Allegations of a toxic, oppressive workplace culture at Nintendo's US branch have come by way of a recent expose. This is not the first time that the famous gaming company has been accused of unethical or controversial corporate practices, with a former employee accusing Nintendo of America of union busting just last month. The past few years have been enlightening for many on the outside looking into the games industry. There have been numerous severe and disturbing allegations against massive games companies like Ubisoft and Activision Blizzard, the latter of which is still embroiled in a class action lawsuit surrounding an alleged culture of abuse, sexism, racism and exploitation. Toxic work environments within the world of gaming also seem to run rampant. As it seems that the number of AAA studios that force employees to crunch or enforce strict, unreasonable rules outnumber those that don't. Nintendo is one major company that has managed to hold on to a more wholesome and ethical image, with most of its recent controversies surrounding baffling or unpopular decisions like the heavily criticised new Nintendo Switch Online features. This may not be the case any longer, as IGN recently published an exhaustive report that compiles numerous testimonials from current and former Nintendo of America employees. The problems outlined in these testimonials are numerous, but some of the most common patterns centre on the company allegedly taking advantage of part-time and contract employees, enforcing overly strict attendance policies, and the formation of a corporate structure that promotes obfuscation, deceit, and confusion. Some of the more disturbing accounts detail claims that temporary workers had their contracts terminated for attending loved ones' funerals, and that employees would be heavily discouraged from being away from their desks for any reason, even short bathroom breaks. So, mate, where to start on this one? It's tragic, isn't it? Because we're huge Nintendo fans. And yeah, they have courted their wholesome image. I mean, they've had slip-ups, they've had mistakes, as any big company probably does, but they've seemingly maintained, a moral backbone for the most part. But this kind of just tears that up, doesn't it? Tears that script up.
Absolutely.
And gives us a glimpse into something which is seemingly prevalent, isn't it? I've no doubt at this point, I just feel this is going on everywhere, and it's just a matter of time before we see the relevant expose.
I was literally going to say, we've seen this so rife at the moment, seemingly within all of the game companies. We've had stuff from all over the world, all different game studios. It sort of suggests to me that this is just how the games industry is. Obviously it's completely wrong for people to be exploited like they are, but how has it come to that this is an acceptable way of working for everybody? It's absolutely shocking. And I think the thing for me on this is that the Nintendo I've always thought of Nintendo as very much a family-friendly company. I've always thought that they look and they give off that, but they're always friendly to everyone. Well, this sort of pulls the rug way out from underneath them in that respect. So, yeah, interesting, Tabs.
Yeah, no, it's a good thing, isn't it? It's a good thing that these things are being brought to our attention, because then that's the opportunity to change, isn't it? And put things right. Again, I've seen a couple of bits from Reggie Fils-Aimé this week clearly drawing a distance between the company he left 3 years ago and what we're hearing about in these reports. You know, he does not want to be brought down under this. But yeah, go on.
I would like to understand. Obviously, this is coming out a lot at the moment, and from obviously we've commented on lots of stories, you know, from different companies where this has been going on and stuff. And I do wonder whether the pandemic and COVID working conditions that the whole world has had to deal with, whether that has highlighted the problem that was already going on and it's been going on for decades, or whether that has contributed to the problem. Because obviously, you know, it was a rough time for everyone, you know, and their people have had to try and continue their businesses going. That's not an excuse for lots of the things that we're seeing has been on hearing about going on, but I wonder which of those really feeds into it.
I think you're right. I think COVID has had a big effect. I think, I'm really I could be pulling this from my bottom, mate, but I just feel like there has been this kind of, I've certainly felt it in my own workspace, a power struggle, because working from home, you know, it brought, certainly to my life, a lot of quality of life that I didn't have when I was, you know, mandated to work at an office. And I think I've certainly felt amongst my colleagues and population the negotiation of that power struggle back to normality, whereby people are still saying, hang on a sec, I want to retain some of these benefits of working from home and the benefits it brings to my work-life balance. And that perhaps that negotiation of power, and we've also seen as well, certain industries, employees flocking away. You know, it's almost like this COVID has had such a big impact on their kind of psyche and helped them reprioritize what's important to them. And if you're lucky enough to benefit from an industry where you can easily walk into another job, I think it's had that kind of shaking up effect, isn't it? Where people have just been like, you know what, I'm going to find a new job that really works for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And gives me purpose. So I wonder if all of this has created this kind of almost like revolution, whereby people are willing now to just, you know, say, no, I'm going to take a stand.
Absolutely.
You know, and then we see all this come out. So yeah, it's really interesting. I'm sure commentators will give us more insight on that in the future. But mate, should we rattle off into everything else so we can play some Elden Ring?
Absolutely. So I'll kick us off. First up, we've got District 9 director Tiba's cyberpunk battle royale shooter Off the Grid for 2023. And what's that with piqued interest?
That gives me tingles, mate, because I love District 9. I love everything cyberpunk, styled. Battle royale, not so bothered, but I'm interested by that.
Yeah, I thought that might pique your interest.
Ubisoft founding family reportedly considering buying the company so nobody else can. Presumably that's the is it the Guillemots, mate, or however you pronounce it?
I thought that was very interesting, which obviously would mean that they get to then control what used to be theirs anyway. But moving on, this one's for Tab specifically. There are currently no concrete plans for Shenmue 4.
Oh, it's a sad one, that, mate. But maybe for the best, given Shenmue 3 and like we were talking about how staged it seemed.
Yeah.
It's apologies to any fans out there. Prince of Persia remake moves studios as Ubisoft regroups on the scope of the game.
I mean, we can only assume from this that Prince of Persia remake is in just a world of pain. I mean, it was coming out, then it looked rubbish, then it was delayed, now there's some sort of change to it. Maybe. Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, and finally this week we've got Final Fantasy 16 is in the final stages of development, which is good to hear.
Yeah, I'm well up for a new Final Fantasy game.
Yeah, me too.
I just hope it's the kind of game I like. I really love 12, but like the ones after that didn't really do it for me.
Yeah, 12 was that hybrid between turn-based and real-time, wasn't it?
The Gambit system.
Yeah, I really liked that as well. I felt it had a lot of quality of life features in it.
Was it 15? I mean, I like some things about 15. I think we both played it.
We did,
but other things I didn't like at all. I didn't get on with the combat at all. Felt very generic-y.
Agreed.
Anyway, that's another conversation for another day. Barcadians, thank you for joining us, if indeed you did. As ever, like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and join us again next Friday at 5 p.m. UK time, if indeed we remember to upload it. And I think, Rich, that's another one for the archives.
Stamped and completed.